Welcome to Australasian Airlines video tutorial on the Level D 767-300. In this video tutorial we'll show you how to operate the aircraft from complete startup to shutdown. We'll show you how to turn on the aircraft systems, how to program the FMC and complete engine startup, all the way through the flight to your shutdown at the gate. This video will be broken up into 3 different videos. The first one will be the cold and dark to taxi stage. The next video will be takeoff to top of climb stage, and the third video will be the top of descent to shutdown. For this video tutorial we'll be doing a flight from Melbourne to Sydney, and we also recommend that you watch the flight planning video tutorial before watching this video. So that way it will actually teach you how to find the different information that you need to program the FMC, such as the weather and calculating the fuel. Also it will tell you how to use the airport charts to find the airport information, such as the ILS, runway headings, frequencies and all that sort of thing. That's all in the actual flight plan video. So what we'll do is we'll just get underway. We won't go into too much detail about the about calculating the fuel and the weather and everything like that, because that's all dealt with in the flight planning video tutorial. So what we do is, the first thing you need to do is, once you've actually worked out your flight, you're going from Melbourne to Sydney as we are in this flight, you've got your flight numbers and your departure times and all the rest of it. Well then, before you start flight sim, the very first thing you need to do is go to the Level D 767 aircraft manager configuration. So this is what this is here. So you open this up and the first thing you'll see here is short haul flight. So you can select that for short haul or long haul. We're actually going to do a short haul flight, Melbourne to Sydney. You then you can then do your fuel. So I've already checked the fuel that we need for this flight, so I won't go into that on this video. But I know that we need just under 14,000 kilos. Now you can use pounds or kilos. Now Flight Sim, the FMC actually uses ton as its metric, so we'll use kilos and then we'll just convert it to ton for the FMC. So basically we actually need just under 14,000 kilos. So as you can see, 13,608 here, but we actually need about 13,800, something like that. So we actually have to go up to the next number here. So you can see it goes up to 15,876. Unfortunately, you can't actually select the exact amount of fuel like you can in the iFly 737. You've just got to go in different stages as the preset amounts here. So we'll just go with the 15,876. So the next thing you do, as you can see, this is our actual passenger loading section. So if you click on this one here on the left, it completely empties the aircraft. If you use the middle section, that just does random passenger loading, and then this one here on the end, on the far right, that actually fills the aircraft completely with passengers. So what I usually do is I click on the last one here, and I actually fill the aircraft with the passengers. And then that will give you your total zero fuel weight down the bottom here. Now if you find that goes into the red, so we'll just go into the cargo section. So up here you just click cargo load, and this will show you the cargo. So if you actually fill the aircraft with the full cargo, you can see here we've gone into the red, which means that we're over our maximum takeoff weight. So all you need to do is, if you go back to passenger loading and you go full passenger loading and you find that you get this overweight section here, all you need to do is just go into the cargo load and just use this middle section, which does random. So you can just use random, and that will actually bring the cargo down, the cargo weight down, and you'll see now we're back in the zero fuel, the max takeoff weight range. So that means that we are balanced and we're in the correct weight, so we're ready to fly. So all you do is just click back on passenger load. You've selected your fuel, you've done your passenger loading, cargo loading, you've got all your weight correct, and then what I do is I actually write this information down. So all we really need on this chart here in this manager is the actual total gross weight, which is 145,282 kilos, and our trim setting is our center of gravity trim, which is 18% or 4.7 on the trim. So that's all we really need to do. So I just write that information down. Again, if you go to the flight planning section on our website, there's a little chart that you can print out called Australasian Airlines Flight Details Chart. If you can print that out, and it's got all the information in it for your flight. So all you need to do is just write in the information, and it's even got a section there for gross weight and center of gravity. So I've already written that down. Once you've actually selected all this, you can then just click Save Settings, and then click OK, and then you can click Exit. So what we do after that is we then start our flight sim, and I've actually got our flight sim already running here, already in a flight to save some time. Now what will happen is when you actually load up your aircraft, you'll get this little load sheet window opening up, and it actually has what you've got here. You've got your fuel up here. So you've got it's actually asking you a couple of things here. Now it's saying load 35,000 pounds of fuel for takeoff weight equals 307,383 pounds with a trim center of gravity of 19%. Now what we want to do is we actually want to use kilos. So as you can see down here in this number 3 section, it says display weights in kilos. So all you need to do is just click on that, and it'll now say display weights in pounds. Okay, so we're now displaying weights in kilos. So as you can see, this has now changed to kilos, and it says load 15,876 kilos of fuel. So we've now selected the measurement, so we're now using kilos, and then all we need to do is just click on that one at the top that says load 15,876 kilos, and we click on that, and it has now loaded our aircraft. As you can see, we're now 22% loaded. I'll just close that off now. All I wanted to do is just show you that so you can see that it has loaded the fuel, so it's 22%. So I'll just close that off. And yeah, just so that's basically how you can tell if the fuel has worked correctly, just by having that information up there. Okay, so we're loaded up at the gate. This is what the actual flight deck looks like, the panel looks like. So what we'll do is we'll just go through, and now what we'll also need is our airport charts, and also our actual IFR route chart. So I'm not worried too much about the airport charts. You can get that information. I've already got that information written down on my flight details chart that I printed out from the website. So we'll just go back to the website, and we'll go to our flight planning page, and we'll come across here to Australia FMC IFR routes. So we just click on that, and then we'll just scroll down until we find our YMML to YSSY. And again, this is all in the flight planning video tutorial on how to actually use all this. So we'll come all the way down. This is in alphabetical order. So we've got YMML to YSSY. Okay, so this is the one we're going to use here. Okay, so we're going to use that plan there. So that's all we need to really concentrate on. So once we've got that, we can just go back to our flight sim. Okay, so all we need to do is open the doors. Okay, so this is basically, we'll get into it now. So the very first thing you do is come up to here, and where it says position, so that'll be your nav lights. So you turn the nav light switch on, so just press the button in there, that's the nav switch light. So what will happen is once we actually power up the aircraft, and our main power is on, our nav lights will come on for us, so that the ground crew know that the aircraft's actually getting loaded up and everything's happening. So yeah, we put our nav light switch on first, so that when we actually power up the aircraft, our nav lights will already be on for us. Okay, so the next thing we do is we come into our overhead. Okay, so this is our main overhead panel, and this is where we program most of our systems from. What you'll have to do is when you first come in here, you'll have to actually, even though we're in a cold and dark cockpit, there are a few systems that are still on, so we have to actually turn them off before we actually do anything else. So what we do is we just go through here, see how these are all on. So if it's got a white bar there, it means it's turned on. So we just go through and we just click those 3 off there. Your isolation switches, they're fine. Now your pack switches, so you've got to make sure they're turned off. So make sure they're off as well. Come up here, we turn our cargo heat off. So that's these 2 switches up here. And then we turn our window heat switches off. So yeah, unfortunately, even though we are in a cold and dark cockpit, there are a few switches that are still in the on position. So you've just got to go through and quickly turn those off. No smoking and seatbelt signs, turn those off. Also set your landing altitude. So your landing altitude would be 0020, which would be 200 feet. So that's set our landing altitude. And that's pretty much it for turning systems off. So it's really only this section down here, which is your air system. So making sure your bleed switches are off. So these are your bleed valves here. So you turn those off. Your left and right pack switches off. Turn your no smoking and seatbelt signs off. Set your landing altitude, and also on your engine start switch, make sure that the engine start is set to both, so that when you actually start these up, you can actually set it 1 or 2, doesn't really matter, but we just leave it to both. That's the standard setup. So once we've got all that set, we can then come over here to our IRS switches. So these are our IRS switches. This basically tells the FMC our actual position. So all we do is tune both of those, or sorry, all those 3 switches to nav, and you'll just see now it's on DC. So that won't actually change anything in there now until we turn the aircraft systems on, like battery and APU and that sort of thing. So the first thing you do is just turn those to nav, and then we turn our battery switch on, which is this one just here. So we turn our battery switch on, and then you'll see there's a heap of lights that have come on. Next thing you do is turn your standby power to auto. Then we can turn our bus tie isolation switches on. So they both go to auto, that's these 2 here. We turn our utility bus left and right switches on. And then we can turn our APU on. Now it's important that you put the APU switch all the way to start, not just to on. You've got to actually click it all the way to start, so that's 2 clicks. And then it'll go back to on automatically. And what will happen is usually you'll hear a bell in the background. You'll see this run light down here will flash and then go out again. And then normally you'll hear a bell, and you'll be able to hear a bell in the background for the engine system starting up and the APU. And what will happen is when this run light comes on and stays on, we can then turn our APU gen on. So basically what we're looking for is this run light down here to be solid. Don't worry too much if you don't get the bell in the background. Some people do, some people don't. But what you're mainly looking for is this run light down here will go solid. So we'll just wait for that to come on, which shouldn't be too far away. Okay, you've got an APU battery discharge light up here. So that means that the APU is actually discharging the battery for the APU because we haven't turned our generator on. So we can turn our generator on once we actually get this run light. Okay, so there's our run light. So that just tells us now that the APU is actually running. And up here underneath the battery switch, we've got the main battery discharge because we're actually running everything off the battery. The APU is actually running, but we are running just off the APU battery, so we are discharging the batteries at the moment. So once you get this run light on here, you can just come up to your APU gen, which is up here, APU generator, and just turn that on. Now what will happen is you'll then get all your other system lights will come on, and if you've got that bell running in the background, that bell will now go out, and we're now running completely on the APU and the APU generator. And you'll see that these 2 lights up here have gone out, so we're no longer using the main battery and we're no longer using the main APU battery. So we're now running completely off the APU generator, which is powering the APU for us. Okay, so then we can actually come over and program a few things over here. So what we do first of all is turn our APU bleed switch on, so that's this one here. So we turn that on. We watch our duct pressure come up to 40. Okay, that's just come up to 40. And then we can turn our left and right pack switches on, and then the duct pressure will drop back to 20. So APU bleed on, wait for the duct pressure to come up to 40, left and right pack switches to auto, and then the duct pressure will drop back to 20. And then we can turn our trim air on. Once you've done that, you'll see this, these lights up here will go out. Okay, just above the trim air switches, you've got the cooling switches. So these actually set the actual temperature inside the cabin. So you got the forward, the aft, and the rear, and these display the actual temperatures at the moment. So it's all in degrees C. So the forward, so we've got the forward, the middle section, and the rear section. So you can see that they're actually changing now. They're cooling down. We've got the air conditioner systems running. So it's 25, 23, and 25. So it's comfortable in the cabin at the moment. Now, what'll happen is you'll sometimes get a flight attendant will come on. You'll hear one of these bells will come on, and there we go. See, there's the bell there. So we'll click the bell. And you'll hear the captain will say, "Okay, cabin," and the flight attendant will actually ask, "Are we okay to close up, captain?" So she'll actually ask quite a fair bit. Are we okay to close up? As in, are we okay to close the doors? Sometimes she'll come on these different switches here. So you got forward, the mid, the aft. If the temperature in those sections is too high or too low, they'll actually come on. You'll hear the bell. Just push the corresponding light that's on, and then the flight attendant will say, you know, or the midsection seems rather warm or rather cold, and then she'll ask the temperature to be turned up or turned down, and then you can just take the appropriate steps for that. If it's too cold, then you just move this one here up higher, so you got the plus and the minus, and you got the plus and minus on the mid and the aft section. Now for this one, she says, are we okay to close up? So we'll just click standby, and we'll just say standby 1. We haven't actually loaded the passengers or anything like that yet, and she'll actually come on a fair bit. Every now and again, the bell will go off, and the light will come on, and each time you push the light, she'll then say, are we okay to close up, captain? So I just usually ignore that until I'm actually ready to close up. Okay, so that's the air systems. If you need to make it cooler, you just put your mouse on here and make it minus. Usually just leave it auto, unless of course they do say, oh look, it seems rather warm or rather cold or whatever, and then you can just adjust it accordingly. We come up to our cargo heat, so our forward and aft cargo heat switches, we turn those on, and our window heat, so we got left and right window heat, so they go on. And then we've done our switches over here. So these are our fuel pumps. Okay, so as you can see, we've got no fuel in the center tanks. It's not a very long flight, so all we need to do is all we do is just click our left and right, aft and forward fuel pumps on. Okay, don't worry about these ones here at the moment. They are for your center pumps, but we don't have anything in the center tanks at the moment. But if you did have anything in here, it will tell you the quantity. So we've got currently 7.9 in the left and the right. It also tells you plus 25 degrees C, and it tells you your total here. So you've got your fuel quantity here for the center tank. As you can see, nothing in it, so don't worry about these center tanks. Now these two switches here are for your fuel crossfeed. I don't ever use those, never have to, but if you've got failures set, then yeah, you may have to do a crossfeed if you find that one of your failures might be you've got a fuel leak in one of the tanks. So you have to do a crossfeed, or if you have to balance the fuel out for whatever reason, then you can use crossfeed, but that's all they are for. I don't use them, but they are there if you need to. So all we're really concentrating on here is the fuel pumps left and right, and the center tanks fuel pump switches, which we don't have on this flight, so that's fine, you can just leave those off. Okay, next thing we do is come over here to this electrical. Here we've got demand, and the demand is the bottom, the primary is the top. So we just flick all these switches here to all, and as you can see, all these lights are going out. Next thing we do is our our hydraulic pumps. So we've got engine hydraulic pumps and electric hydraulic pumps, so we just turn all those on there. Don't worry about where it says press, it's just pressure, meaning that there's no actual pressure there at the moment for the engine pumps, because we don't have any don't have our engines running, so we won't have any pressure going through our engine hydraulic pumps, but we turn them all on anyway. And next thing we do is turn our yaw damper on, so we just turn those back on, and those lights go out. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the overhead at the moment. All those systems are up and running, so all we need to do is just close our overhead, which is this one here, and we can open up our pedestal. Okay, so this is where we program all our radio frequencies. We've got ILS, we've got the course for our runway, we've got our squawk code here, our NDB frequency, and comms, which we don't really use. Again, if you're using ATC or flying with VATSIM or something like that, then use comms, but generally speaking we don't worry about the comms. All you have to really do in here is set your ILS frequency for the runway you're departing from, set the runway course. You can put a squawk code in there. I usually put a squawk code in there even though I'm not flying with ATC. I just do it out of habit, and also for a bit of realism. But if you are flying with ATC like VATSIM and they'll give you a squawk code, then yeah, you can put that in. So we're departing on runway 34 today from Melbourne. So I know what the ILS frequency is. Well, actually, there's no ILS at runway 34 for Melbourne. So all we do is we just put the runway 16 ILS frequency in, because we can use a back course if we need to. So all we do is just put in 109. So put your mouse on the minus, and then plus or minus depending on what you want to do. Now we want to go up on that one, so that's 109.70. So that's got that locked in. That's the ILS frequency for runway 16, and the course for our runway 34 is 340 degrees. So you just do left mouse button with the minus hand. So if it's plus, you go plus. If it's minus, it's minus. So 340. Okay, so there's 340. That's the course. Now our NDB, which again you can get from airport charts, or also FS Commander for those who use FS Commander, and there is a separate video tutorial on that. You can get all this NDB frequency, all the ILS frequencies and runway headings and whatnot from either the airport charts through our website or FS Commander if you use that. Now we'll be using NDB 230 for Melbourne today. Okay, it is a little bit touchy, this button here, so you just have to play around with that a bit. Make sure you get your mouse in the right position. It is a bit tricky at first. It is very touchy, and the numbers are fairly close together, but it's not hard to work that out. So yeah, you get your plus or minus, and they are very close together. So just work that out. The next thing we do is we set our trim for takeoff. So unlike the 737, the trim in this aircraft is set manually. Again, you would have got that from your configuration manager. I wrote this down, so it's actually 4.7 was our trim. So we just pull down on the trim tab, and you'll see that white bar coming down. So when that gets to about there, that's about right. So just above the 5, so you can see the numbers here. So it's 4, 4.5, 5. So just above the 5 there. And yeah, all you do is just put your mouse on there. Just hold the left mouse button down, and then pull down that or push up on it. You just pull down on it to get the trim to come down, and this white bar here represents where your trim setting is. Okay, so that's all locked in. That's all we need to do there for the moment. We'll come back to the throttle quadrant when we actually do our engine startup. So we can close that down for now. And as you can see here, there's an FMC message. So these are our warning lights. They just let us know different things. So you can see we've got an FMC light on. That means that there's an FMC message. So we just click on FMC, and anything that the FMC tells you, there's a message light on here. And the message will actually show up down the bottom here, which is enter IRS position. So what we need to do is we now need to tell the FMC where we're actually situated at Melbourne Airport. So we just click clear. So whenever you get a message up there, just hit the CLR button, which is clear, and that message will go away. Okay, so then all we need to do is just click on this button up here next to FMC. Okay, this gives you information about the latest AIRAC. Now this the AIRAC file for the 767, the 737 and the FS Commander are available for download on the website. So just check that out. This is the latest AIRAC. So make sure you've got that installed prior to actually loading Flight Sim. And then once you've got this, it'll have the date and the time here, which is basically that's for what the actual AIRAC file's for. That just means that that's when it was actually brought out. So all you have to worry about in here is just double checking the actual AIRAC reference, which is actually 1113. So that is the latest AIRAC. So then all you do is just come over here to position initial, and this is where we get our information for our actual position and reference airport. Now you'll see here it says set IRS position. Okay, so this is our last position, and it's saying set IRS position. Now what you should actually have there is a series of boxes. Okay, so if you're not getting those boxes like we're not getting here, all you need to do is just go back to your overhead, which is this button here. Just come back up here to our IRS light or switches, and we just turn those to off. Okay, you can see that it's changing some things here. So once those switches are off, just wait a couple of seconds, and then you can just turn them back to nav again. They'll go, those lights on DC will go out, and then you'll have a line come up. And as you can see now, we've now got our IRS boxes up here. So all you need to do is just click the overhead button again, close overhead, and we can put our IRS position in. Now our last position, which is this one here, that's what's got to go into our position down here, because that's where we're actually situated at Melbourne Airport. So we just click on the button that corresponds to that. First of all, you have to click clear. See how it's come up, enter IRS position again? So just click clear, and then you can click on the button next to the last position. That will bring up the GPS coordinate down the bottom here, and then just put that into those boxes there by clicking on the button next to it. So we've now set the IRS position. We now need to tell the FMC where we're actually located. So we're actually at Melbourne. This last position is actually where we are where we're situated at Melbourne. So we're actually at gate Charlie 7 at the moment. So that's what that GPS coordinate is. So that's Charlie 7, and every airport has its own reference GPS. So the reference airport will be YMML. So we put that in up there. Okay, and that's now given us our GPS coordinate for YMML for Melbourne Airport. Now it's important that you don't get these confused, because this last position is actually the aircraft's position at Melbourne Airport. So you want to make sure that you set the IRS position to your last position, not your actual airport position, because the actual GPS position for the airport could be out in the middle of a runway, or near a taxiway or something like that. So you want to make sure that you tell the FMC that you're actually situated at the gate that you are loaded up at, which is this one. Always be the top one here. Okay, so once we've got that in, we can then go to our route. So we click on route, and this is where we put in our information. So we've got our origin, our destination, our flight number, and our runway. So we know our origin, we know that is Melbourne, so YMML. So we just type that in down the bottom here. We put that into the box there, and there's our origin, YMML. Okay, we're going to Sydney, so YSSY, and that goes up into there. And again, you can get all these airport codes and all the rest of it for off the charts or off FS Commander. So that's how you get that information. So there we've got our origin, our destination. We'll put a flight number in. You can just get the flight numbers off the schedules when you actually choose your aircraft, or choose your flight rather. When you choose your flight and you get your departure time, you'll get your flight number there. So we're just going to use QF450 today. We're doing a Qantas flight, so that just goes in there, QF450. And we've already checked our weather. We're using runway 34, so we just type in 34, and that just goes into there, runway 34. Okay, now it's very important that once you get to this stage that you don't click activate. Okay, even though it says activate, it can be a bit confusing, because you think that, well, I've put my information in here, I now click activate. No, well that's not the case. What you need to do is you need to now go to the next page. So you can see here it says page 1 of 2. We now need to go to the next page, which is a second page in the route section. So all we've actually done here is we've told the aircraft where we're situated. So this is our sorry, I'll just go back to our initial reference, index and position. Okay, so this is our position page. Okay, you can see it's set IRS position has come up again. Don't worry about that. Once you've actually put that in there, that's fine. You don't have to keep doing it over and over again. Once you've actually put that in there, you don't have to do it. That's fine. Okay, so we've got our reference airport, YMML. We've put our last position in. We go next page, and we go to route. Okay, so we click on route. And what we've done basically is we've told the FMC that we're at Melbourne. Okay, so we've put our origin as Melbourne, we've put our destination as YSSY, we've got our flight number, our runway, and now we've got to tell it how we're getting from Melbourne to Sydney. So we've told it we're going Melbourne to Sydney. Obviously we're not going to go in a direct straight line, so we now need to tell it how we're going to get from Melbourne to Sydney, and we go into next page. Okay, so this is where we follow the routes. Okay, so we come to our website, and this is where we've got our routes. Okay, so we've got direct Melbourne, H129, Docell, Y59, Sydney direct. So again, I won't go into any major detail about how to read these. That's all in the flight planning section. Okay, so all we need to worry about is the ML section. So all we do is we come back to our flight, and we type in ML, and that goes up into the top right. Now again, the way these FMCs work is it's always from right to left. So always your 2, so you're always putting your waypoint in first, which is on the right hand side, and then your via, which is your airway. So that always goes on the left. So the process is from right to left, so you go 2 and then via, 2 and then via, so it's waypoint, airway, and that's the same in all the Boeing aircraft. You'll find that that's the same in the 737 as well. So we start at the top right. We've got ML, that's our first waypoint. Okay, now you'll see it's coming up here with some nav aids. Okay, so 99% of the time you'll find that your first waypoint from the airport will be the VOR. Some airports use an NDB, but that's very rare, and again you can get that information out of FS Commander. And again, if you put the wrong waypoint in there, it will actually tell you that there's an error, because the airway does not go from that actual nav aid. So we're actually doing the Melbourne VOR is our first waypoint. So all we do is on the top here you got left 1, right at the top it says VOR DME. So we just select that there, and that's put that in there. Okay, so now we need to tell it where we're going from that. So the next point we need to do is tell it a highway or an airway. So we're going via an airway. So from Melbourne VOR, we're going onto an airway. So we just come back here to our routes chart, and we've got H129. So that's what goes in next. So we just type in H129, and that just goes into the next box under here. So you don't want to put that in the first box, because the first box is our waypoint. You've got to put that in the second box. So we're going from Melbourne to, and that just goes in there. So that's got H129. Then you'll see that it comes up with the next waypoint box here. So we can now put our next waypoint in there. So the next point would be Docell. So we go Docell. And that just goes in there. So we've now got 2 Melbourne VOR on the H129 airway to Docell, and we just keep following this same process all the way through, from right to left, waypoint, airway, so on and so forth, until we get to the end of our actual route. So we come up here, so we've got Y59, so that's the next thing we got in there. So we type in Y59, punch that into there, and that goes across here into our via section. Okay, so we've got a waypoint, an airway, waypoint, airway, so that's our next airway, and then we've got our next waypoint box. So we just come back here and SY, so that's our last waypoint. So we're going from Y59 SY direct, so we just type in SY, and that just goes in there. Okay, so we've told the FMC that we're going from Melbourne to Sydney. We've now told it how we're getting from Melbourne to Sydney. So we're going to Melbourne VOR onto the H129 airway to the Docell waypoint, Y59 airway to Sydney direct. Okay, so we've now told it that. Now we can activate it. Okay, once you push activate, you'll see that there's an execute light on down here. Now it's very important that you push execute before you leave this page. Even though you've clicked activate, executing the actual plan it will actually load the plan into the FMC. So it's very important that once you've clicked activate, you get the white execute light. Prior to leaving this route page, you click execute, and that will then send that information to the FMC. So the next thing we do is we go to our performance initial. So this is all our actual performance initial. So this is where you will need that information from your 737 configuration manager. So you need your gross weight, and you'll need your center of gravity. Now the only thing you need on this page is your gross weight, and the zero fuel weight will automatically be calculated for you. So the fuel's already in there. We've got 15.9. So as you can see, this FMC uses ton. Okay, so we've actually got 150,900 kilos of fuel. Okay, so it's actually 15 ton of fuel. Okay, so it's 15,900 kilos. The gross weight was 145,000 kilos, but you can see the fuel is 15.9, which is 15,900 kilos of fuel. Okay, so we now put our gross weight in. Now I've written it down already, so 145.9. So again, the FMC is using tons, so we need to move the decimal point. So we've actually got to put in 3 digits, and then a point, and then a 0. So you put in 145.9. So it's 145.9, and that just goes up into gross weight, and that's locked that in. Okay, and as you can see, it's now put the 0 fuel weight in there as well. Okay, now reserves. For the 767, your reserves is always 2.0. That will never change. So that just goes in there. So always use 2.0 for your reserves. Cruising altitude, well, we'll go across there at 35,000. Remember, when you're traveling in an easterly direction, you've got to use odd numbers. Traveling in a westerly direction, use even numbers. So we're traveling in an easterly direction, so we'll use 35,000. So that just goes there and up into cruising altitude. So that'll just change it to flight level 350. And again, your cost index, that's always 60. That never changes for the 767. Always 60 for your cost index. And your step size, that's basically your actual step climb. So however many feet per minute you'll be climbing at. So your step size is your 2,000. So 2,000, that will never change either. So always use 2,000, and that always goes into step size. So we've got our gross weight, we've got our reserves at 2.0, which never changes. That's always standard 2.0. Our flight level of 350, so 35,000 feet, and cost index of 60, which never changes. That's always 60. And of course the step size of 2,000, which never changes either. So we're finished in this page. You can see it's page 1 of 1. So we're finished here, and we can just click takeoff, and that'll take us to the takeoff stage. Okay, so flaps 15. We always use flaps 15 for takeoff in the 767. So flaps 15, that just goes into there. It's got 15 degrees, and you can see it's already calculated your reference speed. So your V1, VR, and V2. Now your thrust in degrees C takeoff 47. That's always a standard. That will never change. So it's always 47 degrees. Okay. And this is where we need to get the center of gravity. Again, you would need to get that information from your aircraft configuration manager. I've already written it down. It's 18%. So all we do is type in 18, and that just goes into there. So 4.7, 18%. So what you can actually do, if you want to, you can actually wait until you actually program the FMC before you go into the pedestal, into the throttle quadrant, and set your center of gravity trim. I've already written mine down before, so I already knew what it was. But if you want to wait until you actually put your center of gravity trim into the FMC, when it tells you actually what the trim is, you can. Doesn't really matter which way you go, as long as you remember to put that trim in. That's very important that you put that trim in. Okay, so we've now got our V speeds. For those people using FS passengers, it's a good idea to write these numbers down, because you need to put that information into FS passengers, but for the moment we don't really need to worry about that. The FMC has calculated all that. So all we need to do now is go to the next page. So you can see it's page 1 of 2. So just click next page, and we've got some takeoff reference information here. So we've got wind. So the wind is whatever you got from the from your weather. when you loaded your weather or checked your weather. So the wind at the moment, I'm just going to use 340 at 0. And again, you've got to make sure that you actually follow this layout. So it wants 3 numbers with 2 numbers after a forward slash, so or a backslash. So you've actually got to put it in the sequence that it's asking for. So it's 3 numbers and 2 numbers. So 340 at 00. The reason I'm using that is I haven't actually loaded any weather for this flight. So it's just winds calm at 340. So that'll just go into there. Like that, so that's fine. Don't worry about your slope or your condition, that's fine. Just all you need to worry about is your wind and your acceleration height. So this acceleration height is basically the height above ground level, so your AGL, so height above ground level at which the autopilot will actually reduce the climb thrust. And again, we'll use 1500 feet AGL for that, so that just goes up into there. Okay, so we've got our wind, whatever your wind is, we've just got it winds calm at the moment, so we'll just use that, and acceleration height. So that's the height that your aircraft above ground level will actually reduce the climb thrust back to its actual its climb thrust rather than its takeoff thrust. It's 2 different types of 2 levels of thrust. You've got your takeoff thrust and you've got your actual climb thrust, which is slightly less than your takeoff. So you need to tell the aircraft at what height you want it to reduce its takeoff thrust to, which we use 1500, so that just goes in there. Okay, so that's taken care of all that information. Now we've told the aircraft that we're going from Melbourne to Sydney. We've told it how we're getting from Melbourne to Sydney, but now we need to tell it on how we're actually departing Melbourne, because obviously we're not going to take off from runway 34 and go straight to the Melbourne VOR and then get on our airway. We need to actually give it a SID, which is a standard instrument departure. You need to tell it on how you're departing Melbourne. So all you need to do is just click on departure arrival page, and this will bring up all your runways and your actual SIDs. So the first thing we do is, you can see here 34 is actually active. Okay, we've actually activated that as 34, but we need to actually make that selected. So all we do is push on 34, and that's now selected. Okay, that goes to the top and that's selected. It's always a good idea just to double check your weather before you actually put your runway and your SID in, just in case the weather has changed, the wind has changed direction and you're now using a different runway. So it's always a good idea just to check that as well. And you can see this execute light is on. We don't actually push that yet because we haven't finished in this page. You only ever push that once you've actually finished in this page. So the next thing we need to do is we need to select a SID. Okay, so we've got 3 pages of SIDs here. Now the easiest way to work it out is just go back to your actual route page, your flight plan routes, and you can see here it's got docel. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. That's your first waypoint from Melbourne, and that usually tells you what sort of a departure you're doing. So we've got a docel, so we come over here, and in our FMC you can see it says docel 734. So that's a docel 7 runway 34. So that's the actual one we select. Okay, as you can see that there's no transitions. Some departures and a lot of arrivals have transitions, but this one doesn't, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, we've now got runway 34 selected. We've now got docel 7 departure selected. That's everything within this page. So all we do now is click execute, and that will then send that information to the FMC, and that's now locked in. The only last thing we have to do here is go to VNAV, and we change our transition altitude. Now if we're in the southern hemisphere we always use 10,000 feet, and in the northern hemisphere we use 18,000 feet, so we just change that to 10,000. So that's got that locked in there, and you'll see the execute light comes on. You can see it says page 1 of 3. You don't have to worry about anything else in this page. All you have to do is just change the transition altitude, and then you can click execute, and then you go to our progress page. Now our progress page, which is this button here, that tells us everything about our flight, how it's progressing. It has all our waypoints. So our waypoints are down the side here, so that's 2. We've got our distance to go, we've got our ETA in Zulu or GMT time, and we've got the fuel that we'll have on board when we reach those actual waypoints. So you can see at the moment we're due to arrive at Sydney at 22:52, and we'll have 11.3 tonne of fuel on board when we actually land at Sydney. and of course our top of climb. So it's got our 2 top of climb. We've got a actual time in Zulu, 22:06, and our total distance of 91 nautical miles. Now if you get to this stage and you don't have any information under 2 TC or top of climb, you've missed something in the FMC and you'll need to go back and just check that. But if you're following this video tutorial, you won't have any problems, because that's what these videos are all about, to help you know how to program this correctly, so that when you get to this stage you know it will be correct. Okay, so that's all we really need to do there. We can now close our FMC down and we can come up here and program our autopilot. Okay, so all we need to do, this nav here, this is, even though it says navigation 1 radio, that's actually for our VOR. So all we need to do is the VOR at Melbourne is 1:14:10. I've already checked my charts for that, so it's 1:14:10. So we just change that to 1:14:10, and we select our course, which is a 340, and that's exactly what we put into our pedestal as well. So we just keep clicking the left mouse button until we get to 340. So we've got 1:14:10, 340, and then you've got to select this button here. See how it says man? That's manual. Change that to auto, which means what will happen is all the way along the along your route during your flight, the FMC will automatically tune that frequency to the next VOR if there is actually one in your route. So that'll just go through to automatically change along your flight. Next thing we do is turn our flight director on. Okay, you can see here there's some information come up here on our primary flight display. We've got a 2 and a 2. Okay, so that comes on when you turn your flight director on. Auto throttle, we won't worry about that until we're just about to taxi. And our indicated airspeed. Now airspeed is actually controlled by the FMC, but we do need to give it our actual departure airspeed, because what will happen is if we don't, we could go above 250 knots below 10,000 feet, and we actually break that speed restriction. So we select that for 240. It's 250 is the actual the actual maximum requirement below 10,000 feet, but I select 240 because then it just gives you that extra 10 knot buffer. So I always select that for 240. Our heading is the same as our course, so heading is 340. So again, left mouse button with the minus hand until you get to 340. So there it is, heading 340 and course 340. Vertical speed, you don't have to worry about that, that's all done by the FMC. And our altitude, well, we're going to 35,000, so you just have to change that to 35,000. Then you can just hold the left mouse button down, or you can just click it. I usually just hold the left mouse button down until I get close to 35, and then I just use the left mouse button until I actually get to 35,000. Okay, so none of these switches, we don't have to worry about those yet. That'll come when we do the takeoff, and that'll all be in the actual takeoff video tutorial. So all we really worry about here is setting our frequency here for our VOR, our course, which is our runway course, flight director on, indicated airspeed 240, and our heading of 340, which is the same as our course, and our altitude, which is 35,000, which we've already selected in the FMC. Okay, the next thing we do is we come down here and we turn this switch here on. Okay, and that will actually turn this engine instrumentation on. So this is all your engine readouts. So you got N1, exhaust gas temperature, and N2, which of course not really much information there because our engines aren't running at the moment. Okay, and you see here we've got left engine oil pressure, right engine oil pressure. Our engines aren't running, so it's just telling us that we've got low oil pressure. Okay, so the next thing you do is come across to here, and you can change this to VOR here, or ADF, doesn't really matter. You can change that to VOR, ADF. So I just leave that on. I actually changed that to VOR because that will actually use this one here. So this is just a backup system, so I just change that to VOR, and it points to there, and it gives you a DME readout too. Okay, so that's pretty much all we need to do. We're now at the stage where we're ready to do our push and start. So we need to close our doors, obviously. So we just close our cargo doors. We close our main door. Now the correct process for this is you actually request a pushback clearance. So you request a pushback clearance, and as you're pushing back, the correct start sequence is you start the right hand engine. Once that's all up and running, you then start the left hand engine, But what we'll do for this exercise, I'll just start the actual engines after pushback. So I'll just do the pushback and then I'll go through the startup sequence, just so for the purpose of the video, just so you can concentrate on getting the engine started rather than trying to do the pushback as well as the engine startup. So we'll just do the pushback and then we can just concentrate on the engine startup. So again, I've just got a little pushback gauge here which you can download from flightsim.com. So just before we do the pushback stage, you put your beacon on. So that's this one up here. So that's where it says red. So you've got your nav lights, you've got your position light, which is nav, your red beacon light, you've got white, which is your strobe, and you've got a wing light, and then over here you've got a logo light, and then these are your landing lights down the bottom here, and then you've got taxi lights across to the side here. So we've already got our position light on. We turn our red light on, which is our beacon, rotating beacon, just prior to our pushback. So we'll just do the pushback. Okay, and again, our parking brake is over here, so you can either use your joystick or your yoke, or you can open up throttle quadrant and there's your parking brake right there. Okay, so at this stage, once you actually start your pushback, you would then start your right engine, but we'll just do the pushback for now, and then we'll go through the engine startup sequence. Okay, and again, once you've actually completed the pushback, just come up here and there's the parking brake there, so you can just set the parking brake through there. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go through the engine startup procedure. So the first thing we need to do is go to our overhead, and this is very important that you get this procedure in the right order. You need to make sure that your left and right pack switches are turned off, otherwise your engines will not start. Okay, so you've got your left and right pack switches off, and then you come up here to your start switches. Okay, so then all you need to do is your right hand engine, just move that start switch to GND, which is ground. You'll see the start valve open. Then we just come down to our pedestal, and what we're looking for is this here. This is our N2. So we're waiting for this to come up to 20%. Okay, this represents 20% of N2, which is our turbine. So we're looking for N2, there's the 20, and then we can just open up our fuel control valve, which is here. That's our right hand engine fuel control, and this is our left hand engine fuel control. So once this N2 comes up to 20, we can then turn our fuel control switch to run. We're then looking for the oil pressure coming up, the oil temp, making sure that that's still within the limits. So making sure the oil pressure, so that's very important that your oil pressure is coming up. If your oil pressure doesn't come up, it means that you've got an oil problem and you need to shut down the engine. So again, if you don't have any failure set, you shouldn't have any problems with that. Okay, so that's what we're looking for, oil pressure and the oil temp. Once you've actually started that engine, we just come back to our overhead and we wait for this switch here. Okay, we're looking for our right start switch to go back to auto. Now once that's gone back to auto, we can then do our left engine. So we put that left engine start switch to ground, the valve will open up, and we can then go back to our pedestal or throttle quadrant, and again we're looking for N2 to come up to 20%. So we're just watching these numbers here. Once that gets to 20%, we can then start our left hand engine. Okay, so there's 20% there, and open up the fuel control valve, and you'll see that the oil pressure and the oil temp will actually go up. Okay, you can see these little arrows here on the side for the oil pressure and oil temp. At the moment that's in the normal range. If that arrow ever goes up into this red section here, you can see there's a red section. Major problem, shut the engine down. Same as the oil pressure. If the pressure goes up too far or doesn't come up at all, then yeah, you've got a problem. But generally speaking, if you've got no failure set, you won't have any problems. Okay, so once we've got the engine started, we'll then go to our overhead again, and this start switch will then go back to auto. Okay, so once you've got those switches back to auto, engines are running, you can now turn on your left and right engine generator switches, which is this one here. That's for your left generator, and that's your right engine generator. So you just switch both of those, that'll go to on. You'll hear it clicking as you're doing it. Okay, the next thing you need to do is turn your APU bleed switch off, which is this one here, APU bleed valve. You'll see your duct pressure will drop back to 0. Okay, once that drops back to 0, you can turn your left and your right engine bleed switches on, and the duct pressure will come back up to about 40. And then you can turn your left and your right pack switches back to auto. The duct pressure will drop back to 30, and your air conditioning systems are now running again. As you can see, the temperatures have gone up slightly because we did have those switches off. We didn't have any air cons running, but now that they're running again, you'll see that those numbers will eventually come down. That's the temperature. Okay, once we've got the engines running, we've got our we've got our engine generator switches on. We're running on the left and right engine bleed, and we've got our left and right pack switches back on. We can now turn the APU off. So that's this switch here. We turn that to off, and we turn our APU generator off as well. Okay, so we're now running completely on our engines. That's it for the overhead. We just turn that, close that again. Okay, you can see here there's a couple of this is all this information here is if you have any warnings. This just lets you know what's happening. So the parking brake is on and our passenger signs are off. Okay, so we forgot to do that, so we now need to go back to our overhead, and we just turn our passenger signs no smoking to on and seatbelt signs to auto, and you'll hear the bell sounds as you're doing that as well. Okay, so we just go back to our main panel, and you can see that that light's now gone out, and the only thing we've got there is our parking brake, which obviously is on. So the next thing we need to do is turn our auto throttle to arm. So that's now armed. We set our auto brake, which is this one here, to RTO, which is rejected takeoff, and we set our flaps to 15 degrees. So here's our flaps. So all we do is just move that, and you'll see that this indicator here will go to 15. So that lets us know that we've actually selected flaps 15 degrees for takeoff. Okay, there's the 15 degrees. Okay, so you've got the indicator there that says 15 degrees. If you go into your pedestal or your throttle quadrant, that flap indicator there also says 15 degrees. So you can also check it with that, but really you only need this one here. This will tell you everything you need to know. So yeah, flaps 15. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We're ready to go. All you then do is just request your taxi clearance and just turn your taxi lights on. Okay, so we're now ready to taxi to runway 34. Okay, so that's the end of this video tutorial. The next video will pick up on the runway at Melbourne, runway 34, ready for takeoff, and we'll go to top of climb. So yeah, that's the end of this video tutorial from cold and dark to taxi stage. We hope that this has been a lot of information for you, and it will help you to fully understand the Level D 767-300 and how to actually program the systems and get it all started and running. And of course, if you need any more help, you can always email the website through the contact us page, and you can also get some help from there as well, and the other pilots that already know how to fly it will be more than happy to help you. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.